Hey all, and welcome back to Fuzzy Ducks of Gaming, and my build overview for my Tornado Shot character. Now, I've pretty much finished it. I don't plan on taking it any further because it does all the content I need it to do. I comfortably do the feared, and I don't uber boss. Only thing this character's not going to do is 100% deli. It won't do wave 30 simulacrums, and I very much doubt it will uber boss. But this build is built as a mapper, and I like to do multiple builds in a league. I maxed this build out last league, put like 1.5 to 2 mirrors into it, trounced all the content in the game. So it's not something I really want to grind and do. Again, I'd really like to try out some different builds. So there are lots of different ways to build Tornado Shot now, and especially that bow builds are so much more viable. So what I wanted to do before we get into the build guide is just go through why bow builds are so good on lesser budget than they were before. Like for people that might have seen my Divine Tornado Shot build that I put together using like different tips that I've seen from different streamers, that wouldn't have been possible last league because of the power creep that we've had both in the tree and in Crucible. And I would say the power of bow builds has pretty much doubled from the tree and the bow. So I'm just going to go through those things before we go into my build, what I've got, the gear, that sort of thing. Is really explain the fundamentals of why bow builds are more powerful this league. So we'll go into the tree firstly, and this is where we'll start. And we've got 2 nodes straight off the bat for Tornado Shot that are just amazing. So Master Fletcher is now bows, fire, and additional arrow. And we've got this new multi-shot here, where again, attacks, fire, and additional projectile. These 2 projectiles, if you wanted to get them into your build lastly, you would have to get on your bow, which means crafting a 60 to 80 divine bow. This bow, for example, if it had +2 arrows on it, would probably be 100 divines last league. I crafted this bow for 3.5 divines, so I've saved myself essentially last league 70 divines. There's also this insane mastery that if it survives, I'll be very, very, very shocked, which is hits have 25% chance to treat enemy elemental resistances as inverted. So what this means is if you're not cursing or you're not lowering elemental resistances, and let's say the resistances are 60%, every 4th hit is going to be -60. And that's important for a lot of reasons. One, it obviously means every 4th hit on average, you are absolutely chunking the enemy. Secondly, if you're doing anything like Heat Shiver, for example, and the amount you do damage determines whether you freeze the enemy, every 4th hit, you should be able to freeze the enemy much easier than you would last league. And it's the same if you want to scale your shock up. This helps massively because every 4th hit, you're going to absolutely chunk that enemy, and the shock's going to jump from like 6% up to 30%. With that out of the way, let's talk about my character and how I've built it. So before we do, I want to talk about omniscience. I am not going to build with crystallized omniscience this league for various reasons. The amulet is still very good, and if you know what you're doing, it is a massive DPS increase, and if you can fix all the pitfalls that come along with it, it is definitely the way to build the character in my opinion. The issue is if you're not very, very experienced with bow builds, you are going to get something wrong on an omniscience build and it's going to brick it and it's going to feel really, really horrible. You're either going to be so squishy you can't get through a map, you're going to have 80% accuracy, so you're going to miss most of your shots. You're not going to have enough mana to run even 2 auras. There's loads and loads of things that can cause omniscience builds to feel worse than non-omni builds. The way I wanted to build my character is just with rares, so it's easy to understand and easy to replicate. It's not the best way to build the character, but for me, it suits my needs perfectly because I only want to map. If you want a boss, I would turn off now. This isn't how I've set up the character. So I'm going to show a map showcase in a bit to show you the power of the build. It's going to be a 50% monster life map. We're going to do Delirium. We're going to do Harvest in the Delirium. We get a Deli boss. We juice the Crucible all the way up and we don't die. And as you can see, I am 44% into level 96. So the character is surviving really well. So firstly, let's go through the gear. And it is all very, very simple. So before we get into the gear, I want to go through one gem. It's the only complicated part of the build. And that is Ancestral Vision. I always want to be ailment immune on all my characters, and if I'm right side of the tree, I will 100% always be spell suppress capped. This jewel allows you to get much more ailment avoidance for less opportunity cost. Essentially, 1 jewel socket and 1 mod on your boots is going to cap your ailment immunity without needing to roll it on your boots and roll it on your chest or do anything silly. What this does is, however much spell suppression you have, half of that also goes to avoid elemental ailments. But it's your uncapped spell suppression. So you could go up to 130% spell suppression because spell suppression is easy to get on gear than ailment avoidance. And then you're going to have 65% chance to avoid elemental ailments. So that is the only bit that's slightly complicated about the way I've built the character. But essentially, all you need to know is whatever your spell suppression is, half that, that's what your ailment avoidance is going to be. The only node you need to be careful of is this one here. So because you're on full life in the game, it will say that you have this 10% spell suppression. The issue is when you lose your life, you're suddenly not ailment immune and you can get shot, you can get frozen. It's not a good thing. So if we go to my defenses, my avoidance is 106%. It's actually 101 because 10% of that spell suppression is giving me 5% avoidance because I'm on full life. If we quickly, so I'm just going to quickly go and unspec a node. So we'll unspec this life node. I'm just going to put in this one where your skills cost life and then look at the defenses here. Now it's 101% because of that 10%. If this said 103 before, I'd suddenly be down to 96. And then I've got a chance of getting shocked, chilled, frozen, not what you want. So make sure that you are spell suppression capped without that. Normally, just spell suppression in softcore, you don't need to be 100%. You can live on 90 fairly comfortably, especially if you've got this full life node. Most of the time, you're going to be spell suppression capped. However, because we're relying on it for our ailment avoidance, it's a big no-no to ever drop below 100. So because of that, I have 20% on my tree here. I'm 100% spell suppression capped, which gives me 50. And then I have 29 on my boots. The reason it's 29 is because I'm actually 2% over the spell suppression cap. So that gives me the extra 1%. But whatever you do, make up the rest of the ailment avoidance on your boots. That is the only complicated part of the build. The rest is all simple and the gear is simple as well. So the bow is a tri-elemental bow. There is details in my Rain of Arrows guide, which I'll link in the video description on how to craft the bow. Ignore what I've done. I took a gamble to craft in trying to save 2 divines and it paid off, but it could have not paid off and it could have ended up costing me more. You can guarantee a bow like this. The base is about, I think it was about 80 chaos. You then need essences, probably like 30 of them, 40 of them, and then 4 divines, and that is your craft done. And you've got a bow that is going to, well, it will see you through all of your gameplay. You don't need to upgrade this bow after, especially with how strong Crucible is. So let's talk about Crucible trees. On here for bows, you either want to get massive attack speed or massive crit chance and then flat damage, and that will do you. There's lots of different combinations you can do. So if we look at my tree, I've got T1 lightning damage. I've got 0.8% critical strike chance. This mod here, which I do need to try and remove, but at the moment I really like the rest of the tree, so I'm not gambling. And then I've got 120% increased endurance, frenzy, and power charge duration. And that's important for the way I've built the character because I generate all 3 charges. If you just want a bog standard like attack build, yeah, you just want early damage, crit chance, attack speed. Do not take any of the nodes where you lose attack speed. They are not worth it. Get another tree put onto your bow. You don't want to do that. However, the one that gives you 30% extra attack speed and you lose global damage is really, really good if you can get that. The DPS works out about evenly, but the build feels so much smoother when you've got like attacks per second on your bow of 2.1. It feels amazing. The helmet is just a rare helmet with suppression, resistances, life. I've gone for crit chance tornado enchant because it's much cheaper. If you can afford it, you can go for the additional secondary projectile. The other reason behind me going the crit chance is it allows me to drop my diamond flask because I'm pretty much 100% crit. And then for implicits, I've gone safety. I've gone fizz, taken as elemental, and then I've gone reduced mana cost of attacks. The quiver, again, there is a detailed instructions on how to craft this in the written guide, but you're essentially looking for crit multi, prod speed, damage of bows, if you can life, and another damage mod. You can spend as little as a divine to craft the quiver or as much as 50 if you want to get like +1 arrow and loads of juice. I would recommend just buying either projectile speed or crit multi fractured and then rolling with essences until you get a juicy combo of mods. This quiver's not amazing, but it does the job. For my chest piece, I'm not going to go through this because I messed it up. You essentially want life, resistances, and fizz taken as elemental. And then I've gone for grace effect. You could go for anger. And then I've gone for increase effect of non-curse auras from your skills. I'm not sure this is the right choice. I think there might be something better, but for now, that's what I've rolled. So on here, I think something like, because we're only using 3 auras, I think something like crit multi would probably be better here that I think we can roll. So I'm actually going to do some re-rolling on this and see what we can hit. There we go, crit multi to attack damage. Perfect. I think that's going to end up better. Yeah, so here I'd look for crit multi or aura effect and another grace or anger effect. The rings, I'm just going for life, accuracy, LE damage, and then crafted non-channeling skills. These, if you just search for all these mods, they're probably not going to be that expensive, I wouldn't have thought. Or you could just buy fractured bases and craft them with essences. There's nothing special about these rings. If you can eke chaos resistance in there, brilliant, but it's not mandatory. The gloves, again, these are not great. They are a fractured spell suppression base. I've used zeal essences until I hit 1 resistance, then I've crafted life. That's it. And then I've got spell suppression and attack speed as my implicits. I'd probably recommend going rage on hit instead of attack speed, mainly because there's this mastery you can take here where nearby enemies are intimidated while you've got rage. And nearby, you should be, because we're not running fast shot, nearby to most enemies when you're playing. This is, even if it's only at 50% of the time for 1 point, it's really, really good. Stygian Vise, life, resistances, LE damage with attacks. Very simple. The jewel is, I like attack speed if you've crit recently, because attack speed is I think the more you get attack speed on these sort of builds, the better they feel. And then I've just gone for some damage with bows. This isn't a great jewel, but it's okay. And then I mentioned the boots are where I rolled my 29% ailment avoidance to make me capped. I've got action speed for the other implicit, and then it's life, resistances, suppression, and movement speed. Now for flask, as I say, I'm not running a granite flask because I don't have any armor, and the 2 or 3k armor that a flask gives is not going to do very much. So I'm running a jade flask, running at Zeri's Promise for chaos resistance, and it's about 5% more DPS to extra chaos damage. Taste of Hate, we don't really benefit from the offensive part because we don't do a lot of fizz. We do a little bit, you'll get a little bit of damage out of it. It's more for the physical damage taken as cold. Now, I wanted 15%, which is max, but they were about 4 divines and I didn't have the currency at the time. So I paid a divine for this, and it's 13% physical damage from hits taken as cold. So if I can rejig my helmet to get the craft for 8% on here for fizz taken as, you can get 40 to 45% physical damage taken as elemental. And then, yeah, as I said, it's just a jade flask, quicksilver flask with attack speed, and a life flask. In terms of Pantheons, because I'm always mapping, it's going to be Lunaris and it's going to be Aberrath. I need to get these finished off. I'm just super lazy when it comes to Pantheons. Now, there's one more bit to look at in the tree, and it's this bit here. So before we do, I'll just go over the cluster jewels. Now, I've had a lot of people messaging me saying, I can't get this cluster jewel of yours. It's 8 divines. You don't need it. I just bought this because it was the cheapest type of jewel available at the time. So again, refer to my written document for cluster jewels. Any 8 passive attack or bow cluster is going to be absolutely fine. The main reason for the large cluster jewel is to get access to 2 mediums because they bring a lot of power to the build. So if you can't get something like Overshot, Sadist, and Disorientating Display, don't worry about it. Sadist DPS, the more damage you get, the less it does. You just go for an attack cluster or a bow cluster with any 3 notables. They're all pretty decent, and we're not going to take the back one anyway. I say it's more to get some repeater and streamline jewels into the build. These are both really, really cheap. They're easy to craft yourself or buy them. There shouldn't be much more than 20 chaos. And then I've got the Ancestral Vision that we've already gone through, and a Watcher's Eye for precision damage. So the Impossible Escape is how we're allocating these nodes here. So it's Conduit, and it was about 1.5 divines. This isn't mandatory. The only reason I'm doing it is because I get those charge nodes from my bow. If I can then get charges on kill, I'm pretty much guaranteed to kill all my charges up. If this jumps up though to like 3 divines, 4 divines, it's not worth it. There's plenty of other things you can do with the points. It's just situational for the bow that I've got. If you didn't want to do this and take these here, you could just put any decent damage tool in there and then take some more nodes on the tree, whether it's life, or you can take the elemental damage nodes here. You can maybe get these mark nodes here, which give good DPS. There's lots that you can do. As I said, the reason I've gone for it is because I want to get charge on kill, because my charges last 20 to 24 seconds. There's also some decent nodes you can pick up. So I've finished capping my spell suppression with reflexes. You get life, and then you get crit chance and crit multi. But as I say, this is just for the specific way I've built the character, and is no way mandatory to make the build work. And then the last thing is a Lethal Pride, which I have Onslaught on kill. And then I've got lots and lots of smaller good mods like increased crit chance, projectile damage, increased effective auras, lots and lots of different bits. You just want to get Onslaught and kill and as many decent damage mods as you can get. Use Path of Building, use a Legion Jewel Finder to work out what jewel works best for you and is in a reasonable budget. I think I paid a divine for this. You don't really need to go paying any more for this sort of jewel. So we'll go through the gem links and then we'll run the map showcase. Now, I'm only running a 5-link ballista. There's 2 reasons. One, I don't want to pay to 16 my bow, and I'm only mapping. I don't need ballistas, really. Secondly, I may want to link my auras up to an Enlighten eventually and push the precision higher, which means I need an extra jewel socket and I don't have any spare. This would basically be where I put my precision. So the 5-link for the ballistas is Tornado Shot, Focus Ballista, Increased Crit Damage, Inspiration, and Ballista Totem Support. My 6-link is Tornado Shot. Doesn't need to be anomalous because we're full Ellie now. So just 20/20 Tornado Shot. GMP, Inspiration, Ellie damage with attacks. This can be Awakened, Trinity, and Increased Crit Damage. In the helmet, we've got the mark set up. So mark on hit, life tap, sniper's mark, and our precision. In the gloves, we've got a Mana Forge arrow support setup that gives us Culling Strike, power charges, and frenzy charges. It's pretty OP. I'll be surprised if this survives in its state next league because it is amazing. So essentially you get from just this 4-link, maximum frenzy charges up all the time, maximum power charges up all the time, and Culling Strike on bosses. And then lastly, I've just got a Flame Dash and then my 3 auras. Grace, Vile Haste, but I'm not using Haste. It's just the Vile version that I've got here on Spacebar. And then Anger. And that's kind of the gem setup. It's really, really straightforward. Originally, I was going to try and do some sort of physical hatred scaling, but it costs a lot more to do it, and I really don't want to invest that much money into a character that I just want to map with. It just doesn't need the investment. So we'll just clear up Ascendancy and why I've picked the Ascendancy I have. For Bandits, if you're doing this from scratch, you're killing all. 2 skill points is just way more important than anything else. So in terms of Ascendancy, I'm actually not going Fast Shot now. I'm going Focal Point. There's a few reasons for it. So the Ascendancy is Gathering Winds, Focal Point, Ricochet, and Endless Munitions. The reason I've dropped Fast Shot is good because obviously when you're clearing mobs on the edge of the screen, Fast Shot benefits massively. Like if one of your arrows chains, it can almost get the whole benefit of Fast Shot because it's traveling so far. The issue with Fast Shot is when you're doing stuff like Delirium and things like that, and monsters get close, you do a lot less damage with your arrows, and this is probably what's going to kill you, is getting overwhelmed by monsters in a short distance when you've got Fast Shot. Now, I'm not going point blank either. Like, I think you could go either and you could justify it. Like, point blank can save your life a few times because when enemies get close, you're going to do loads of damage. And for like white and blue mobs, you're still going to off-screen them anyway. Yes, you have a lot less damage, but you should still kill them. But I think for the purpose of keeping your build nice and rounded, just running neither of them works absolutely fine. At least you know your damage is consistent. If you're going to play specific content where mobs are never going to get near you, you could go Fast Shot. If you're just going to do Juice Deli, you might want to go point blank. This is something that I'd never really considered, and someone put a comment on my One Divine Tornado Shot guide saying, oh, you don't want to build it like this, you want to use Focal Point and you want to use point blank, and I didn't really understand the reasoning, and then he explained it, and it did make sense. In certain content, point blank is going to be better. Like if you are juicing deli content where enemies aren't going to die straight away, point blank works better because you are nearly always going to be surrounded by enemies. But it's really for niche scenarios, and like if you're magic finding and you might need the DPS boost and enemies are always going to be near you, then taking something like point blank might make sense. I think for an overall build, I would just do neither. I think don't go point blank because it does gimp your DPS too much if you're not really juicing. And then Fast Shot, again, although it's good for screen-wide clears and stuff like Legion, when enemies get close is when you might have problems with Fast Shot. You can do either or. I don't think it matters too much. It really depends on how you want to play the build. But for me, I'm just leaving both of them off. So we're going Focal Point for the extra mark damage, and then we're not going point blank. So it's just standard bow damage, and at least I know consistently how much damage my attacks are going to do. So we'll just go and do a very quick map. So at the moment, I'm still doing a kind of Alk and Go strategy. I'm still trying to save up a decent amount of currency. So we'll just roll it so that it's fairly tricky. Yeah, so this one looks horrendous. Monster movement speed, more life, temp chains, reduce effective auras. So we'll give this one a go. So I can see we've got a deli mirror. So we will go and start the map. And then we'll do Crucible as well. And Harvest. May as well do everything so you can get a good idea of how the build performs. Don't want any of them. Not really. So Harvest, the deli fog gets paused, which is nice. If you get a timer come up, it just means you're going too far ahead of the fog. So you might have to step out your Harvest and wait a minute before you go in. But we should be fine. As you see, for things like Harvest, the monster life can cause issues, but we should be okay with the setup that we've got. And then Harvest, the other issue is with the way I got the character set up, you might not sustain endurance charges because it's on kill, and obviously the mobs come in sort of little bursts. So really I should be looting after, but I don't think we're going to die even if we don't have endurance charges. It should be fine. Alright, one more lot to go, so we'll see if this is worth doing. It is. We've got 2 purples. Now, I'm just doing Harvest because I really like the mechanic, and at some point I do think the Harvest juice is going to be worth more as people really start crafting like that end game stuff, and more people start needing to do it. I think the Harvest juice should go up in price a little bit. So that was crit resistant, which is a bit of a horrible mod when I've got 60% more life and I'm getting killed by all these things. Right, done out of there. Oh, we got a deli boss with however much extra life is on the map. Easy enough. So that's what I mean. The single target is not lacking even when you go all rares because of how powerful bow builds are this league. I think you can build a character however you want. Whatever you want to do, whatever you want to tinker and tailor, it will work. I just always like to build a little bit of defenses into my build. Like, it's not tanky, don't get me wrong, but, you know, with endurance charges, fizz taken as, decent evasion, spell suppression, armor, and immunity, it's pretty good for a bow build. I don't think I would want more defenses. You don't really need them because of how quickly you're moving and how much you're going to basically off-screen nearly everything. So we won't finish the whole map. We'll do the boss, then we'll do Crucible. So if we do the boss, that should give us 7 daily rewards. So we'll stop that and get our rewards. Hopefully get some daily orbs. We got 1, 2, cool. 20% lightning. Now we'll take that and we'll vial both of these just in case they successfully vial because they'll probably be worth some money. I don't know about lightning strike, but I think a 20% quality vial lightning now is probably going to be worth something. Actually, it probably won't because the quality on lightning now is rubbish, isn't it? Chance of shock. Okay, it won't be worth anything. We won't do that. Do we have a bow that we can Crucible? We don't, so let's just pick this one up. We'll charge it up and see how we get on. This might be a bit nasty with all that extra life, but we'll charge it up all the way because why not? This is the only thing really that I'm scared of doing, especially if you get a boss and there's all that extra life. And once my Chaos Flask goes down, we're in big trouble here. Just got to avoid those crystals. Like that. Oh, I love the way the Forge gets in the way arrows though. That's quite annoying. Okay, cool. So that was a bit of a nasty one, but we still did it. So yeah, 53% more monster life, temp change, reduce effective auras, extra cast, movement speed. I don't think you get much more of a horrible map than that, and it's coped really well with it. So we'll get out of there. So yeah, that's how the build performs. I've done tons of bossing as well, and it's been fine. I'm not going to touch Ubers. I don't tackle Uber bosses, and honestly, on this sort of build, it costs so much to get a build Uber viable, unless you want to go full glass cannon, which is no fun for any other content. So I won't be touching Ubers, and I'm not going to do this build spec'd out so that it's going to be able to complete Ubers because it's not really what this build's designed for. It's designed to just do whatever league content you want mapping, do it nice and quick, and hopefully stay alive. And that covers the build overview. It's a fairly straightforward and simple build, but as you can see from the footage, it works really, really well. I'll try and do some more bossing content. We'll do the feared, we'll do the rest of the invitation. So far I've done The hidden, I've done the twisted, and I've done the formed. I still need to do the forgotten, the feared, and the elder slayers, but there'll be no issue getting them completed. The feared, I'll probably die a couple of times because I'm terrible at it. But the DPS is there. The issue with this particular build doing it is I have built it purely as a mapper, so don't use this build to farm invitations. I'm just going to do them once to get them all ticked off, get my last favourites lot done, and that's it. Because the build is purely revolved to map. You would need to make quite a few changes if you wanted to just farm invitations. So that's it for the video. Thank you very much for watching. Take care, and see you in the next one.